For 20 years he sat behind that bench and decided the fate of other people's lives. He quoted the law from memory. He gave speeches about justice at law school graduations. He was the most respected judge in the county. And every single night he came home to a wife who had no idea that the man she married had been selling his verdicts to the highest bidder since the very beginning. Gregory Walsh had the kind of career that made other lawyers feel like they had chosen wrong. He had graduated at the top of his class, clerked for a federal appellate judge, and risen through the Ohio court system with a reputation so clean that no one had ever questioned it. By the time he was appointed to the county bench at 41, people were already quietly talking about a federal appointment. Gregory Walsh was the kind of man the system trusted completely. Diane Walsh had been with him since law school. She was not a lawyer herself. She had studied literature, taught high school English for a few years, and then stepped back when their 2 daughters were born. She attended every ceremony. She stood beside him in every photograph. She believed, without question, that she was married to a good man. She found the first envelope by accident. It was a Saturday morning in November. Gregory was at a conference out of town. Diane was looking for the car insurance documents in his home office when she pulled open the wrong drawer and found a plain white envelope with no name on it. Inside was $40,000 in cash and a handwritten note with a case number and 2 words, "As discussed." Diane put the envelope back exactly where she found it. She drove to her sister's house and sat in the kitchen for 3 hours without saying anything. Then she drove home, made dinner, and waited for her husband to return. She did not confront him. She started paying attention. Over the next 4 months, Diane Walsh conducted her own quiet investigation. She photographed documents when Gregory was out of the room. She noted names and case numbers she found on his desk. She tracked deposits in accounts she had not known existed. She said nothing. She changed nothing. She waited until she had enough. Then she walked into the FBI field office in Columbus on a Tuesday morning with a folder containing 68 pages of documentation and asked to speak with someone about a sitting judge. The federal investigation that followed lasted 7 months. By the end of it, prosecutors had identified 11 separate cases over a 9-year period in which Gregory Walsh had accepted payments totaling more than $800,000 in exchange for favorable rulings. The money had moved through shell accounts and cash payments that Gregory had been careful to keep below reporting thresholds. He had been careful about everything, except his wife. Gregory Walsh was indicted on federal corruption charges and removed from the bench the same day. His official court portrait, which had hung in the courthouse lobby for 16 years, was taken down before the press conference ended. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He filed for divorce and simultaneously filed a civil lawsuit against Diane, alleging that she had illegally accessed his private financial records, violated his privacy, and caused irreparable damage to his career and reputation. He was a man who had spent his life in courtrooms, and he intended to use every tool available to him. Diane's attorney, a former federal prosecutor named Marcus Webb, told her it was the most revealing thing Gregory could have done. It told them exactly what kind of man they were dealing with. In court, Gregory's legal team painted Diane as a woman who had betrayed her husband for personal gain. Marcus Webb stood up and asked the court one question before presenting a single piece of evidence. He asked what personal gain looked like for a woman who had spent 20 years building a life she trusted, discovered it was built on fraud, and walked into a federal building alone to do the right thing. Then he submitted the evidence, the envelope, the photographs, the financial records, the testimony from the FBI agent confirming Diane had come forward voluntarily without any promise of immunity or financial benefit. And then he played a voice recording. It had been captured accidentally at a dinner party 14 months earlier on a phone left recording in a jacket pocket. Gregory Walsh's voice speaking to a colleague, saying that the key to staying clean was making sure the people closest to you never asked questions. The courtroom was completely silent when it finished playing. Judge Sandra Holloway dismissed Gregory's civil lawsuit in its entirety. She found that Diane Walsh had not illegally accessed private records, but had discovered evidence of criminal activity in the course of her normal presence in her own home. She referred the matter to prosecutors for review of potential obstruction charges. Gregory Walsh was convicted on 7 of 11 federal corruption counts and sentenced to 9 years in federal prison. He was disbarred the same week. Diane Walsh sold the house. She moved to a smaller city where nobody knew her name. She started teaching English again at a community college, the same subject she had studied 30 years earlier, before she stepped back for a life that turned out to be something she had never agreed to. She was asked once whether she had any regrets about what she had done. She said she only regretted that it had taken her so long to open that drawer. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Justice Journals. Every week, real courtrooms, real consequences, and the truth that powerful people spend their lives trying to hide.